If you were a kid in the early 2000s, you probably remember seeing these toys around. These are Bionicles. These are the coolest toys you could ever have. You showed up to recess with a Bionicle and kids were just throwing lunch money at you wanting to play with them. You know, fuck Bakugan. We got Bionicles, dude. At least that's how I felt about them. I used to love these guys. My friends and I had a ton of these growing up in, like, what was that? 3rd grade. Bionicles were a new line of toys produced in 2001 as a way to give a more story-driven action figure line to a new generation of kids. They were supposed to be our generation's G.I. Joe, if that makes sense. And by God, did it work, at least for a little bit. Bionicles were everywhere from 2001 to like 2008, I think. I don't know. I was like 4, so I don't really remember, but I remember seeing them everywhere. And hey, I mean, they were at least popular enough to produce 4 movies? To produce 4 movies from 2003 to 2009. Now, I was never really conscious enough to watch any of the Bionicle movies because I was either not born yet or grasping reality, so I don't remember much of these, but every once in a while, a few years later, I would see them coming on like late at night on like Cartoon Network and shit. I don't remember what they were actually on, don't quote me on that, but they were somewhere, and I just remember kind of turning them off or looking away, because why would I watch a Bionicles movie? Oh, by the way, this video is about us watching a Bionicle. Now, like I mentioned a little bit ago, there are 4 movies in this franchise, and with most franchises, you can kind of watch them in chronological order of when they were released, but because I wanted to do some research, I wanted to make sure that I was watching them in the right order, so I went over to the mecca of places to find nerdy information about discontinued toys. It's Reddit. I went to Reddit. And according to this Reddit thread from 7 years ago, the timeline would be movie 2, 3, 1, then 4. Wait, hang on. Are we talking about G1 or G2? Because the order of the original trilogy is actually B2, B3, then B1. Wait, but I thought there were 4 movies. Okay, so B4 is technically a reboot, so it's B4, B2, B3, then B1. We're just watching them in release order. Bionicles 1 Mask of Light, released in 2003, was the start of the bountiful Bionicles quadrilogy, and also gives us a bunch of information on the world of Bionicles. Anyways, before we get to the rundown of the movie, what are Bionicles? Well, I mean, what are Bionicles in the universe? Because in real life, they're obviously a toy brand from Lego. Hey! Bionicles, as per the Brickipedia, are biomechanical humanoid creatures who inhabit the Mata Nui universe. So basically, the Bionicles are like these cyborg dudes that live on this magical island named Mata Nui. Cool? Cool. Also, a major system in this is how they have elemental powers based on these masks that they wear, but we'll get into that as we go with the movies, don't worry. Now, the first movie, Mask of Light, opens up with a little lore dump. Basically, the island is named after the spirit that brought life to the planet, Mata Nui, and all was, you know, awesome and cool and sick and sweet until his evil brother, Makuta, I don't know, there's a lot of names like that, so be prepared for that. Betrayed Mata Nui and forced him into a deep sleep. So basically, the world is corrupted by Makuta, and the Bionicles are trying to fix the world. We open up to these 2 lovely Bionicles. And immediately you're probably thinking, hey man, those aren't the Bionicles I remember. Weren't they like long and big? But just you wait till they put on the mask. This scene introduces Takua and Jale, who are going to be our main characters. They're just 2 Bionicles chilling in this cave. Takua was trying to investigate this like stone monument thing that they mentioned, and then there's lava, and then this mask goes flying, and then his friend tells him they're missing the culling match upstairs, and already I can just kind of feel what my main gripe with this movie is going to be. This movie, along with like the rest of the Bionicles universe, really likes to use fake words in place of real words to give it a more fantasy feel, which is a trope you see a lot, and if it's done right, can be good, but if it's not explained really well, it just kind of leads to a lot of confusion and a little bit of detachment, because I just really don't understand what's going on when they throw out 30 names that mean absolutely nothing. As we continue on, Takua trying to reach for the mask that he dropped, which I still don't know what the mask is, but that's what the mask is. I'm sorry. Anyways, he gets rescued by the Toa of Fire, Toa Tahu. Apparently, the 2 little guys are what's known as Motorans, which is like the race of the people that they are. We'll go into a little bit more depth about that in a little bit, but the mini guys are called Motorans. They were also a toy. Anything you see in here is a toy that they sold at one point. But all of my criticisms from earlier aside, this is sick as fuck. Robot cyborg man surfing on lava with his surfboard that turns into swords. This could, like, only get cooler if he has a fucking force field that shoots the lava away. Why not, you know? That's awesome. Can you guys see why this was the coolest shit on the playground when I was in 3rd grade? Anyways, Tamale and Jake head off to the culling match, and I just wanted to mention, he has a giant robotic crab as a pet. Also a toy, by the way, but that's just awesome. Like, dude, if I could have a gigantic crab following me around, hell yeah, I would. They head on over and we finally get more info on the Bionicles world. Basically, they're divided up into 6 elements based on their tribe, and each element has an avatar, which they refer to as a Toa. It's basically somebody who put on the mask of that element and is imbued with the powers of that element. So like, there's the fire guy, right? He does fire shit. There's the water one, and then we're also introduced to the stone one. There's 3 more that we don't meet yet, but we do see later in the movie, because there's the air one, the ice one, and the stone one. Also, just an interesting little lore drop I found while I was researching this video. The creator of the Bionicle franchise, when asked why he did 6 elements specifically and not like 8 or 12, was because LEGO wanted 6 different colors to market to kids. Fair enough. Honestly, despite this fact, I have to say the world building in this is actually pretty cool so far. Even by today's standards, it's a pretty unique take. These weird biomechanical robot people living in a really tribalistic society is just a setting you don't see very often. Like, the closest thing I can even think of right now is the robots from Kenshi, and even that's a bit of a stretch, so I really like the vibe so far. Anyways, they get to the culling match that was mentioned earlier, and at first I was ready for like a sick-ass robot death match, right? But it's lacrosse? Why? Okay, it's not actually lacrosse, but it's kind of similar. You know, they got the stick, they throw the ball. Shut up. The tournament doesn't have a lot of plot significance, but I like how it makes the world feel just a little bit more alive. I think a lot of stories tend to neglect making their world feel alive, and it just feels like a dead world with only our main character and that's it, which is a problem later in the movie, but at least right now this tournament gives it a feel that there's a bunch of these people living here, you know? Anyways, we cut to the elder dudes checking out that Kanohi mask that he dropped in the lava earlier, and remember what I said about there being 6 elements? Well, throw that out the fucking window, because there's 7 now. The elders then send our 2 main dudes, Tacoma and Jale, out to find the 7th Toa, the Avatar of Light, and deliver him the mask. Basically, they get sent out because the elders are like, well, if they found the mask, then they're probably the ones that need to deliver it to whoever's supposed to be wearing it. Anyways, we cut over to our big bad Makuta, you know, Maranui's brother, the evil one, and he summons these 3 weird fish dudes that are like hell-bent on stopping the 7th Toa from being revived. Also, I don't know what the fuck this scene is, but they like turn into bikes and float away. I just thought that was kind of funny. All in all, for what it is, I'd say this movie's pretty good. Of course, I'm not expecting like a masterpiece of a movie, but for a movie about a universe that was designed by LEGO specifically to sell toys, there's a surprising amount of effort and passion put into this world, and I'm glad they did that, you know? Anyways, the rest of our movie is us following our 2 guys on their journey through the mystical land and defeating the big bad, of course. They get into some crazy hijinks, you know? They start fighting some dangerous creatures like the Biona bear. They meet some of the other Toas, which the green one has like an Irish kind of accent.
I'd say you're a natural, brave fire spitter.
I don't know what that is. Just thought that was kind of funny. But we get some pretty sick shots along the way, like the ice Toa skating on his swords. There's the shot of the stone Toa dropping an entire ceiling on a bunch of evil dudes. And there's also the shot of Takua getting spilled on. We get this big brawl between the Toa and the weird Murloc dudes, and we find out that Takua was the Toa of Light all along. Oh, also, Jala fucking died, dude. He's dead. Remember that guy? Yeah, he's dead. I don't know how he died. He grabbed the stick of kill you, I guess. I don't know, but he's dead now. Anyways, the movie climaxes in a big fight with Takua, who is now the Toa of Light, and Makuta, the evil brother, who is, I think he's supposed to be like the Toa of Shadow. They don't call him that, but he's like evil and dark and he hides in the shadows a lot. Anyways, they start fighting, he grabs Makuta, they fall into a pool of goo, and then they get out fused into a super duper Toa of Light and Shadow. Once they get out of the goo, they tell everyone that they have to awaken Maranui, which is what the Light guy was here to do and what the Shadow guy was here to stop. I don't know how that worked, but I'm not gonna question it. Also, he just fucking revives Jale. He walks up, he's like, wake up. And the dude's back, so sweet. We don't actually see Maranui wake up or anything, but we get our Bionicle closing words and the movie ends. I have to say, this movie kind of fucking slapped. I can't lie. Like I said earlier, if you go in with the proper expectations, this movie is exactly what it's trying to be, and a little bit more. It had a pretty decent plot line, a unique world and universe, and some decently well-made characters. The movie really heralded the Destiny theming, pretty similar to like a Lord of the Rings story. Takua's destiny was revealed by the light mask over time. You know, he's like, wait, maybe I do have to put this on, but he's like struggling because he doesn't want the responsibility because he's lazy. And this whole like living up to your destiny is actually a pretty common theme throughout the rest of the movies, but I feel like it's most apparent here. Also, there was a surprisingly deep line earlier in the movie that I just kind of wanted to mention. Takua and Jale are talking, and Jale says, you know, you're always in search of stories. What about your story? To which Takua responds, I don't have a story. And then Jale quickly replies with, that's only because you don't stay long enough to make one. And I just thought that was surprisingly deep for a kids movie about selling toys. I'm pretty against the whole like making a show just so they can make toys, but if they're gonna put this much effort into it, I say why not, you know? If their goal was to sell more Bionicles, they did their fucking job, because I'm about to buy 7. Let's just hope they can keep that up with the second movie. Bionicle II, released in 2004, was actually received better than the first one, and by most accounts online is the best in the series. Bionicle II, which occurs about 1,000 years before the first one, follows 6 seemingly random Matorans whose names are Vakama, Onewa, Wanua, Matau, Nuju, and Nokama. Try remembering those. They were all gifted these magical stones by the last Toa of their age, Toa Lacan. Unfortunately, he gets captured, so it's up to these 6 to become the new Toas and save Metra Nui. It's like this giant mecha city where all the robot Matoran people lived in harmony. Until the Fire Nation attacked. Our 6 heroes gather at the Great Temple, where they transform into Toa and begin a quest to prove themselves by retrieving the 6 hidden Great Discs. These discs are like the weapons that everybody used. It was part of the toys. They would all shoot little discs, so in the universe, they all have these Great Discs. Yeah, I don't know. It's their weapon, right? Now, despite their efforts, Turaga Dume, the leader of this world, who draws a ton of similarities to Emperor Palpatine, rejects them as imposters and sends the Vaki to arrest them. The Vaki are like these Bionicle cops, and Turaga is just what they call the leaders. So if you hear me say Turaga, just think of like fucking king or emperor. Unfortunately, a major theme of these movies is me saying nonsense words and then having to explain what those nonsense words mean so I don't look insane. Anyways, the team is split up. 3 of them get captured and 3 of them escape through the city's intricate chute system, which I don't know what these are used for, but okay. As they regroup, they slowly discover their respective masked powers. You know, they get their fire and their water abilities, and they also learn from a mysterious Turaga, who is later revealed to be Lacan from earlier, that their true mission is to protect the Matoran, the true heart of Metra Nui. Vakama, the fire Toa, also discovers that the real Dume is trapped in a cave somewhere, and the one upstairs is actually Makuta in disguise. Makuta puts the Matoran into canisters to like capture them and casts Matanui back into slumber. The Toa fight to rescue the Matoran and flee the collapsing city, being pursued by Makuta, and during the final confrontation, Lacan, the original Toa, sacrifices himself to save Vakama, who then goes on to defeat Makuta using his new power of invisibility. I don't know why the fire guy has invisibility, but okay. The Toa then trap Makuta in a prison of protodermis, which is like this super strong material that all their discs are made out of, whatever, it's strong, right? And they escape off to a new island, which they name Matanui. There they give up their Toa powers to become Turaga, guiding the Matoran into a new age. So this is the island that the first movie takes place on, but it's 1,000 years before. This is like the founding of that island, right? That's basically what happened here. This movie, much like the first, follows themes of destiny, heroism, and sacrifice. With the 6 random people at the beginning having to rise to their destiny and become saviors of the world, it is a very in-your-face message, but it's still enjoyable nonetheless. Overall, besides picture quality, because I have no idea if the animation got better, I can see why this one is rated better than the first. It is a lot more grandiose than the first one, giving the world like a larger feeling. Like in the first one, their Grand Coliseum is like a few rocks in this random lava cave, and it just, I don't know, it felt kind of lackluster, but here it's like this giant fucking city, and they have a giant coliseum in the middle. That's pretty sweet. Also, the reason I have to use words like Matoran and Turaga and things like that, and I can't just call them Bionicles, is there's different races of Bionicle. I didn't know that until I was researching this video, but if I don't call them by their race name and just call them Bionicles, I'm going to get exactly 6 angry comments, and that's just too much to handle. This movie's action is also a lot more fleshed out with more fantastical fights. There's still not as much as I would expect from a movie about action figure toys, but there's more than the first one, and they like to explore the Toa's unique powers in a lot more detail. Like, did you know the green green guy can shapeshift? Because I didn't until I watched this one. I did like the overall plotline of the first movie more, with their grand adventure from humble beginnings. But I do like that they focus on the Toa and their powers more in this one, because to me that's what Bionicles are these Toa guys. So I was kind of surprised that the first movie didn't follow them, you know? Also, I know they start off as regular nobodies in the second one too, but the first one follows the struggle of going from nothing to something like greater than. And the second one, they just kind of like take the stones and they're like, oh, I guess we're gods now. Sick. Also, I know I'm gonna get a few Bionicle fans that are like super into the movies, and I want to say I tried doing as much research as I can, and I know there's a ton of comics and shit that I'm missing with that. I know there's a ton of lore that I'm glossing over, but I wanted to make this revisit pure and just focus on what a casual viewer would find, you know, just randomly stumbling upon the movies on Nickelodeon one night, rather than deep diving the lore and explaining exactly why Matoa number 7 actually kicks this rock over here instead of the rock over there, changing the entire timeline. My only real complaint about this one is I wish there was more action. Like I mentioned earlier, for a movie about action figures, the fight scenes are very few and far between. I don't know, I was just hoping for more, considering that they're trying to sell action figures. All in all, I would say that this movie definitely feels more like a movie that just happens to have toys about it, rather than a movie that they made so they could sell more toys. It fills in a lot of the plot holes, or well, more so like gaps in the world building that I just thought were a little odd. And honestly, if they can keep it up like this, I would say that these are pretty underrated movies, and I'm actually kind of excited to see what the third one is like. Bionicle III Web of Shadows, released in 2005, is not a direct sequel time-wise, but it follows the 6 Toa from the second movie that we just watched, returning back to Metro Nui, finding it covered in shadow. I know I mentioned that they gave up their powers to become Turaga and lead the people, but I guess that didn't happen. I don't think they actually like gave them up. I don't know, but they have their powers back there. They're over here, right? Now, this is the only one of the 4 that I actually remember seeing as a kid, but I remember being terrified of this movie. I would see like the box art or like the lady and just turn it off because I'd be scared. Keep in mind, I was like 4. Now, this one is also easily the darkest of the 4, and I'd say it's my favorite after a rewatch. I actually kind of liked this one, I'm not gonna lie. A basic plot summary is after the events of the last movie, because they were gone for so long, the city got overtaken by the Viscerak Horde, which are these little spider creature things, and their leaders, Rudaka and King Sidarak. I hope I say that right. I just have to say, every name I've heard in this franchise feels like I went to a fantasy name generator online and just started spamming generate. I was like, you know what, that's a good one. Yeah, I think I'm gonna choose this one. Like, I don't know, they're all right. Like, this is the second movie with these 6 Toa, and I still don't really remember any of their names except the fire guy. The 6 Toa make it back onto the island and are almost immediately captured by the spiders. It's kind of funny. It's like 5 minutes into the movie, they're already captured. Also, this is just a quick side note that I noticed while I was watching this movie. Lego really likes making the fire guy the main character. Because while they're talking to him, they're like, Vakama, you led us here. What's happening? How are we gonna get out? And I just thought it was kind of interesting. The fire guy in Bionicle in all 3 of the movies so far has been the leader. The fire guy in Lego Ninjago was the leader. And the fire guy in fucking Legends of Chima was the leader. You guys remember Legends of Chima? Anyways, the evil lady Rudaka transforms the Toa into these weird hybrid people. They're supposed to be like beast Toa hybrids. I don't know, they're just kind of like hunched over now. They eventually break free, they run away, and they devise a plan to seek out this dude named Kitangu, who supposedly can cure them of their bestiality. That is not the right to cure them of their beast transformation. They're told to seek him out by these dudes who are like parallels. I don't know, they're like a different race of Bionicle. They're not really important. It just gets kind of hard to tell when they're all the same pieces. Vakama, the fire one, eventually gets manipulated into leading the Viscerak, while the rest of the Toa head on out to find Kitangu. They eventually find him and convince him to help them. The movie climaxes with a final battle where our goat Kitangu defeats King Sidarak, and Vakama is eventually convinced by the green one, I'm blanking on his name right now, to rejoin the good side. They all join together to fight Rudaka, and eventually defeat her. Unfortunately, while they're fighting her, they hit her like Hearthstone, I don't know what it is, but apparently that was what was holding Makuta. Remember the big bad, the brother of Mana Nui, the super evil guy? That was his prison. It was just in her chest for some reason, so now he's free. I don't think they fight him. Maybe I'm wrong and I just didn't realize it, but I don't think they fight him. I think they're just like, you know what? I'm not scared of him. And then they never address it. But anyways, Kitangu returns them to their original form, and man, they love locking arms. There's like 30 different scenes throughout the last 3 movies of them just locking arms. They come back to their normal size and they rescue all the Matoran from those pods that they got put in the second movie. And I just want to say, This movie fucking slaps, dude. This movie's a masterpiece, quite possibly one of the best movies I've ever seen in my entire life. I'm exaggerating a bit, but it was definitely my favorite of the 3 that we've watched so far, and definitely better than the 4th one. The way they used the beast transformation to show their struggles with loss of control and Vakama's whole journey with rediscovering himself and guilt and self-doubt just gives these characters a surprisingly realistic portrayal that I really wasn't expecting. I also really like the fact that in this movie the villain actually felt like a villain, because in the first 2 there's the evil Makuta, but they don't really explain why he's evil. He's just like the evil brother, and he's just like, oh, I'm evil, I hate my brother because I'm evil, and I'm evil and dark and evil. And I'm like, okay, cool. But like Rudaka and King Sidorak are just like major assholes, and Rudaka has this whole plan to take over the world. And I don't know, I like that like sinister nature where they actually have a reason to be doing the evil things that they're doing, you know? Anyways, what I wasn't super fond of in this movie is the only enemy they really ever fight are these lame-ass hex bug looking guys. These that are also Bionicle toys that you can buy. But I don't know, it's not too big of a deal because there was at least a lot more action in this movie. I just wish they fought anything other than just a bunch of spiders over and over again. All in all, if you're gonna rewatch any of these movies, I'd say do this one. It feels the most fleshed out of the last 3, and it just has a much easier to follow storyline in my opinion. Now, if you're one of 3 Bionicle fans still alive on this earth, you know that we're about to approach what is known as the bad one. Bionicle IV, The Legend Reborn, released in 2009, is different from the last 3 for a lot of reasons. First off, it is a standalone sequel to the trilogy we just watched, which is why people label it more as a reboot than the 4th in the series. Also, it was made by Universal rather than Miramax. It has completely different directors, completely different writers, so basically everything about the production of this movie was completely different. Now, this movie actually follows Mata Nui, the like spirit god dude from the first 3 that they all worshipped, which is honestly kind of cool. I didn't realize he was an actual dude. I thought he was just like a spirit. But basically, he used to be a giant robotic body until his evil brother Makuta, you know, that darn rascal Makuta that shows up everywhere, kicked him out of the body. This expelled Mata Nui's soul to this barren planet called Bara Magna. He lands there as the Mask of Life and just generates himself a new body, but he also befriends this little beetle named Click. Oh, look at that little guy. Anyways, he meets some locals and allies with some Glatorians named Akar, Kina, and Gresh, who are mostly unimportant, but they're like his supporting cast, right? Oh, also, Glatorians are another new race of Bionicle that don't really matter because they look exactly the same as every other race. They slowly uncover a growing threat from an alliance between the Skrull and the Bone Hunters, which are also both just other races. I think the Bone Hunters are like part of the Skrull, like race-wise. I don't know. If you want to know what race they are, look up the fucking Wikipedia page. But after learning about this, Mata Nui rallies the neighboring Glatorian villages to fight against the Horde. And while all this is happening, Mata Nui slowly discovers that Metis, this guy, is a traitor. The movie culminates in a fight between Mata Nui and Metis, where Mata Nui defeats him and also the Skrull leader Tuma. They named him Tumor. What the fuck, man? But using that Mask of Life that he's wearing, Mata Nui grabs Metis and just turns him into a snake. He like slams him on his head and he's like, you are a snake now. Which I was just like, okay, I didn't know this guy was God. Well, actually, we did know that. Wait, never mind. But with the big bad out of the way and all the villages united, they build Mata Nui a giant robot body so he can reclaim his original body back on Mata Nui. And that is the end of the movie. And what a movie it was. Okay, as a standalone plotline, it really wasn't that bad. It's got all the marks, you know, you've got a main character who's struggling with a bad situation, you've got him rising to the challenge, defeating the big bad, saving the day, you know, that sort of thing. Just like the rest of them, this movie really likes to hone in on the whole, like, unity and rising to your destiny themes. So it was at least thematically pretty on point with the rest of the franchise. That's kind of where the similarities end. My main problem with this movie is honestly just that it's really dull. All of the world building from the last 3 movies, totally gone, right? They just were like, what if we take all this and just fucking throw it away? Because we're gonna send this dude to a new planet. You know, sometimes that works, right? Like Planet Sheen from the Jimmy Neutron universe. That was a bad example, but what I'm trying to say is having an in-universe storyline that's not related to the other storyline is like a pretty common thing that happens, and if you do it well, it's pretty cool, right? The problem with this is they sent him to the most boring fucking planet ever. They even call it like this barren wasteland. I don't know why they were like, yes, let's send him there. But everything is completely unfamiliar, right? So now we have to learn all these new words again. We have to learn all these new races that are here again. And it's just, it's so much for so little return when it could have just been a story about Mata Nui on the main planet, you know? They also completely ditched the whole Toa concept, which to me, again, was the main draw of Bionicles. And with everybody else looking like the Toa and not being those like little guys, It kind of visually took away from the power of Mata Nui. You know, he's supposed to be this big god creature, and he just looks like everybody else. And speaking of him, they made him shockingly weak and boring for him being this like mythical god that everybody worshipped in the first 3 movies. And I know he's like supposed to be a less powerful version because he got shot off into space, but it just, they somehow made him feel very lackluster and just very one-dimensional. Not to mention the worst part, which is that this movie ends on a cliffhanger and they're never making a 5th movie, so you know, that never helps. All in all, I really don't think this was a bad movie. It definitely had a lot more action than the other 3, and it had a much easier to follow plot line that meant it was a lot easier and quicker for a casual viewer to watch and pick up on what was happening without needing a bachelor's degree in bionicology. And I can see why longtime fans didn't really vibe with this movie. If you're a fan of the lore of the first 3, getting a movie that's supposed to be in universe and has absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the universe is kind of like a little gut punch, you know? I can see why people are upset by that, but for the casual viewer, it really wasn't bad. But with that being said, we have reached the end of the 4th movie, and our little Bionicle journey has come to a close. Bionicle is a shockingly developed world, and I had absolutely no clue there was so much lore. Doing a lot of research for this, finding like the Wikipedia articles, terrible name by the way, I was just shocked at how many different races and everything there are for what is, at the end of the day, a line of toys that Lego made that they just decided to make these movies to sell more toys, right? That's all this is. That's all this was at the end of the day. This is basically Transformers, but I guess a different kind of robot. I didn't even think about the fact that they were both robots. Even by the own creators' accounts, 80% of every major decision was decided for marketing purposes. You know, 6 elements, 6 different colors to sell to kids. Having these legendary heroes, now we can sell legendary hero action figures to the kids. And honestly, watching these and thinking about it more, this really does feel like a scenario where Bionicle walked so Lego Ninjago could run, because that shit is like still going, isn't it? Honestly, the worst part about all of this is just the fact that these are getting very close to lost media territory. These movies were surprisingly hard to find, except for the 3rd one, which I found on some random YouTube channel with like 300 subscribers, fully uploaded in 1080p, so thank you to that guy. But 1 and 2 were really hard to find a visible copy of it, and 4 I could only find on dailymotion.com, so yeah, that was fun. Apparently all of these used to be in like this big unlisted YouTube group, but they've since been removed for one reason or another, so I couldn't use those. And I know there's physical copies, but it's not like those are being produced anymore. It's just really hard to find these movies, you know? All in all, I would say if you were a fan of Bionicles growing up at all, you were eating good. These movies were like surprisingly well done and serviceable to watch, and they were just so much better than a lot of modern takes on video game movies or toy movies or movies made to sell things. But even as somebody just casually rewatching them, I found myself enjoying them pretty thoroughly. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I have any desire to rewatch these movies. They are still, at the end of the day, Bionicle movies, but they were not bad at all, and I would say I enjoyed my time with them. My name is Prisk, that's Reggie, don't look at him, and I'll see you on Mata Nui!